To be dad or not to be dad? That is the big question I get from so many of my clients, from my commenters, and from people I have coaching sessions with. And it usually comes from two directions. One, those guys who have never been married and want to have a family. And then those guys who are on the other side of it and they're going through a divorce and they want to maintain healthy relationships with their kids to the best of their ability. So today I want to talk about both of those situations. I'm going to talk about the guys who want to get married first, and then I'm going to move on to the guys who are already in it. But I think the content is valuable because I'm going to be talking about the role of fatherhood just in general to start with, and then getting into some more of the specifics after that. So let's talk about to be dad or not to be dad. Trying to describe what it means to be in a family and to be the father and to have children is a lot like trying to describe what it's like to be able to swim, for example. Until you get in the water, it's really impossible to understand exactly what you're dealing with, but I'm going to do my best to describe it. And if you're thinking about swimming, rather than swimming in a shallow pool, it's sort of like being thrown into the ocean because you don't know, what's going to happen. There's a lot of threats and there's a lot of unknowns when you're married and children come into the picture. But it's worth it, I believe, because it does force you as a man to grow in ways that nothing else can. In an ideal world, only men who have superpower levels of patience and kindness and the ability to give love and are thoughtful and are strong leaders and good communicators and would have all these amazing abilities to be a great father would ever get into the job. Unfortunately, when a child is born, there is a blank on the birth certificate that needs to be filled in, and that blank says father. And getting your name filled in on that blank is relatively easy. It doesn't take a lot of work. But to be a dad requires a lot more. Being a dad requires a lot of those superpowers that we talked about. Fortunately, I think inside most men, those superpowers lie dormant, and it is possible to tap into them. Once you hold your child for the first time, you understand exactly that. And it will enable you to endure things and to give of yourself in ways that nothing else in life can. It is, without question, one of the most profound experiences in life. So the big question that most guys offer, or they give to me, is marriage worth it? Knowing all that I know about the nature of women for the sake of having a family, for the sake of children. And I'm a big believer in taking risks. I think that life is made for taking risks. That's why we're here. We're not here to play it safe the whole time. Now, I know that there are people who have paid some very heavy prices, and I understand their perspective, and I wouldn't disagree with anything that they said, even to the point of you should never even date a woman. I understand why they would say that. But on the other side of it, I also know from my own experience the level of I don't know how to put it into words. It's like a connection you have with the world that you don't get from anything else. When you have children and you are a father in a family, it teaches you more about yourself and how to be a better man than I can really safely put into words. I mean, all those things I talked about earlier about being a strong leader, being able to endure a lot, being more resilient, being able to give of yourself. And I'm talking about giving love in a way that you just don't give to anyone else under any other circumstances. It is just that kind of experience. It makes you stronger. It makes you more empathetic. It gives you more compassion. It gives you more ability to connect with other people and to understand life from a different experience or from a different perspective than anything you can imagine. It is transformational. Being a father is a transformational experience. And if you're lucky enough to have that experience, even if it's just for a while, even if she takes the kids 5 years later, 10 years later, or whatever, and you were able to have that experience with those kids, and you were able to play a role in the development of their lives and to be a significant factor to them, and you can be and earn that label of being a dad, well, it's absolutely worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Doesn't mean you don't try to be as careful as you can, make your decisions as well as you can. You know, you still got to pick a good woman. But keep in mind, even the very best woman that you can imagine is still capable of changing her behaviors and changing her personality once children come into the picture. It's entirely possible with the mix of hormones and stress and sleep deprivation and all the other stuff, all the expectations that go along with it. You know, the whole, mother label is loaded with all kinds of expectations, and it's a tough thing, I think, for a lot of women to manage, and so they end up taking it out on their husbands, when they are unable to meet whatever expectations they have of themselves, or they're not able to fill the role well enough, or they feel like they need more help and they don't feel like you're doing enough. I mean, there's so much shit that goes with it. But all that being said, it's still worth it. Still worth it. You may pay a price. In fact, there's no question about it. You will pay a price. Whether it's the price of your marriage and your finances and all that stuff or not, I don't know. But in terms of giving of yourself, you're going to have to be unselfish. You're going to have to give up the idea that you put your own needs first, because once kids come into the picture, their needs are paramount all the time. And your relationship with this woman, this mother that you have created, has changed completely. You guys are no longer just a couple. No, you're a family, and that changes everything. It's going to put that child front and center in your lives, in both of your lives, and that child's going to take precedent over a lot of your needs, maybe even all of your needs in some cases. So yeah, there's a lot to give up. There's a lot of sacrifice. But even with all that being said, it's still worth it. Absolutely still worth it. In fact, I think that you're lucky if you can get yourself into the position where you can be a father / a dad. That dumb dog. Oh my God. Anyway, let's talk about the other aspects here. So if you've already earned your dad title and you're staring down the barrel of a divorce, then it's paramount that you set your concerns and your needs aside and put your children's needs first through this entire process, and make it clear to your future ex-wife that this is your approach and this is what you want from her. You've got to express some leadership here, otherwise she's going to try to lead in this environment, because she's going to think that as the mother, she has some right to these children, and she has no more right to them than you do. So, with that in mind, understand that courts these days will not automatically give children to their mothers. You have as much right in most states to get custody of those children as she does. So, getting a 50-50 split is relatively easy. That's what the courts want to do. They want to give you 50-50. So I would go for at least that. At the very least, you should be looking at 50-50 split with your kids. Creating a relationship with them is extremely important here, because now the dynamics of your relationship are going to change. Because up until now, you've had to support everything that your wife wanted to do with the children. Every rule that she put in place, every every idea that she wanted to present to them, all were requirements that you supported and you go along with it. And you were just the yes men for a lot of this stuff. Well, now you're going to have to take a leadership role and decide what the relationship with your kids is going to be like. I would strongly suggest that you turn yourself into the trusted parent, the one who will be available when they're teenagers and get into a little bit of trouble and they want to call somebody's parent, or you've got to pick them up from a party because they've been drinking or something like that. You want to be that parent. You want to be the one that they go to when they need advice. You want to be the parent that they come to when things don't make sense to them. And you do that by building trust with them. You build trust by giving them autonomy. So there's going to be a lot of going back and forth for a while, especially if your ex-wife is holding on to the house. There's going to be a strong level of comfort that your kids are going to have in that, in that house. And so they may, in the beginning, be a little hesitant about coming over to your place. And if that's the case, I think you've just got to create space for it. You got to tell them how much you love them. You got to make plans with them, take them places, do things with them. But understand that giving them autonomy so that they can make decisions for themselves to a point is very, very important. Another important thing when you're going through a divorce and you've got kids, especially kids that you can have conversations with, they're not little kids, is you never talk shit about your ex. And I think you got to talk to your ex about this issue so that you guys have an agreement in place that neither one of you is going to badmouth the other. When the divorce begins, at the very, very beginning, as soon as you hear that this is happening, you're going to need to have the foresight to understand that this is an inevitable outcome, that you're probably going to end up here. And by taking a leadership role in the divorce, by saying, my primary concern is for the children, and remove yourself from this equation to a certain degree, you will change the dynamic of this divorce. Because most mothers, now some are sociopaths, but most mothers are going to want to make sure that their kids are cared for. And you need to talk to her about the continuation of this family in a different form. So you're no longer a single family, but in a way you always will be. And I think by letting her know there's some continuity to this relationship, even though it's changing, is extremely important. Because with that picture in her mind, you're letting her know that you do not intend to be adversarial at this point. If you become adversarial and you become vindictive and you become an asshole right now, then you will set the tone for the rest of the divorce. But if you put the children first and you tell her that's your primary concern and you talk to her about the continuity of this relationship and what you see for the future in terms of you're all going to have to go to weddings together, graduations, there's going to be grandchildren at one day. All these things are going to happen, and the last thing you need is to have an angry, vindictive relationship with your ex, regardless of what she's done. You have to be thinking 10, 20, 30 years down the road. You chose her, you had babies with her, she's in your life from now on. From now on, unless you want to walk away from the whole thing and give up your children and the whole bit. And if that's your deal, then you don't need to be watching this video, do you? You should be watching some other video. You're just the father. You're not the dad. So just understand that. But if you're going to continue this relationship, you've got to use your wife's energy to help form it as well. And the only way you can use her is if you take a leadership role and you start setting the agenda to how this is going to go. Now, setting the agenda does not mean answering all the questions. It does not mean having power over every single detail of the agenda. It just means that you're deciding what are the issues at stake here and how they should be approached. And the primary issue is what's in the best interest of the children. The children's welfare is number one. Number two, the continuity of this relationship as it pertains to the kids from now on. The third one, 50-50 split. That's a non-negotiable. You're going to have at least a 50-50 split. Unless one of you is a criminal, there's probably going to be very little grounds for any judge to do anything different than that. Number 4, you're just going to have to start down that path of forgiveness in that moment and just say, I am not going to fight her over every petty thing that we've ever done together and every issue that comes up, because that will lead to the destruction of this continuity in this relationship, and it will have a negative impact on the kids. So it's a tough thing. Now, if I said it was easy, I'd be lying. I mean, this is definitely about as hard as it gets. So I strongly suggest that if you're going to be going through a divorce and you're worried about what's going to happen to your kids and you want to play a role in their lives, well, you're going to have to make that your paramount, your singular focus as a dad, to make sure your kids are taken care of. A couple of days ago, I was walking through the woods and I came across this little flower that was just blooming for the very first time. And we're just starting to see the real beginnings of spring. I mean, even most of the underbrush still hasn't started to turn green yet, but this little flower just starting to really out of place. It just popped up. And I've noticed after walking these woods now for a very long time, at least 12 or 13 years, that every spring, the plants that are closest to the soil, closest to the earth, tend to come up first. And they do that for a number of reasons, especially these little flowers, because the bigger, stronger plants have not filled in. The trees, the bushes, the shrubs, they haven't filled in yet. And so the light is able to hit these little flowers. They're very hardy and they're very strong, and they seem to be able to manage the temperature changes pretty well. But unless they continue to get that light, they're going to die fast. So it's really important when you think about your kid, when you think about that little flower being close to the earth, it's very important for him or her to be very close to you and your wife and to feel that there is a solid foundation under them. If they have that sensation, then they will be able to grow healthy and strong and be normal kids. The statistics on kids that come from divorced families is really bad. I mean, kids don't do well in school. They're more likely to have drug and alcohol problems. They're more likely to drop out. There's all kinds of issues with it. But that's not all of them. That's not all of them. It's just an increase in the amount of these kids that have to struggle. It's up to you and your ex-wife to make sure that your kids have the opportunity to thrive. And if you, as a dad, put their needs ahead of your own at this time, which is hard to do because you're going to be feeling a lot of anguish and pain and discomfort and change. I mean, it's damned hard to do. But if you can put their needs first, yeah, it will pay off for you for the rest of your life, because they'll recognize it and they'll remember it, and they'll be healthier and stronger and better kids because of it. And at the end of the day, that's all you want for your kids, right? I mean, that's it. You want them to succeed. You want them to have good lives. You want them to be happy. And you, as the dad, have more power over that than just about anyone else in their lives. Because their mother, we all know about the nature of women. They tend to be very emotional and unstable, and they make decisions quickly, and they don't think things through frequently. And yeah, you are going to be the rock, I'm talking about Dwayne Johnson here. I'm talking about like the Rock of Gibraltar. You're going to be that rock that is the foundation for their lives. And if you can be that, then you will have earned that title, Dad. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I certainly hope this video has been interesting, maybe enlightening, educational in some way. If it has, please like and subscribe. And if you know someone who's going through a divorce and they've got kids, please share the video with them. Maybe it'll help them make some decisions and prioritize their lives. Because I know it's a tough time, but if you can prioritize your kids, it gives you purpose, and it makes this process, I think, a little bit easier, actually. So All right, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.